Welcome, each one of you, bringing different identities and realities. I'm grateful that you are willing to spend this time on this conversation. And this somehow I feel difference as a component is, I think it's been always very challenging and very relevant to this world. But nowadays we see more and more. So before we get into quiet time, I just want Gregor to talk about what happened today in Australia, and then we will start. Over to you, Gregor.
Thank you, Raja. This is a very timely conversation to be had after the terror attack on the Hanukkah festival at Bondi Beach, where 16 people so far have been killed and many are still wounded. This is happening sadly in many places around the world, and our prayers and thoughts are with those who are directly affected, and our hope is for wisdom and humanity to prevail and become more visible.
Over to you, Candice.
So a thinking environment, what is a thinking environment? I always say a thinking environment is shorthand for thinking, feeling, being environment, but that would be a bit of a mouthful. So a thinking environment, we know it covers all of those bases. And it's one in which we can all be thinking for ourselves and thinking well together. And it's based on an observation and a question that has driven the founder of this body of work for over 50 years. And I think it's driven her since she was born, actually. And the observation is that the quality of everything that we do, absolutely everything that we do, depends on the thinking that sits behind it. And the question for Nancy Klein, the founder, then became, so how do we enable thinking for ourselves with courage, with grace, with rigor, with imagination? And she was so driven by this question that she, together with a group of teachers who were equally ignited by this question, started a school. And the purpose of the school was really predominantly to explore and be an inquiry around what would it take for the learners to really thrive in their thinking. And what they discovered over a period of over 12 years, I think, was really actually very liberating. What they discovered was that what was most impacting our ability to thrive in our thinking and our feeling and our being is how we are being treated by the people who are with us when we are attempting to think through something. And so it's about the space between us. And that's really liberating, because how we are being with one another and how we are treating one another and how we are thinking about one another is truly one of the only things we can have control over, and that it actually had nothing to do with the very limiting assumptions we have about our ability to think well that might be connected with where we went to school or didn't go to school, or the letters we have behind our name, or group identities linked to gender or race or caste. And it became this wide open space to explore. So what are these ways of treating ourselves and others that would be so enabling? And what they discovered was that there were actually 10 ways of treating ourselves and others, which is a little unfortunate because it sounds as though it was invented, and that there are these 10 laws or commandments, which of course is really not the point. And we always say, can we find the 11th component so that it sounds more organic? And the 10 components, they really work together as a system. And one of the components being present in an interaction is really liberating. So you can create a thinking environment with one of them, but it's when they are interacting together that it's truly transformational. And we say that the 10 components call out to one another. They dance together. So it's not a linear list that you tick off. They are in profound relationship with one another. And they are all words that we're familiar with in our everyday context, but it's the ability to enable our liberated thinking that is really the meaning that we're interested in the context of a thinking environment. So they have a slightly different meaning. So one of them is attention, and the meaning of attention in a thinking environment is listening with generative attention and without interruption in order to enable this liberated thinking. And so it is this not interrupting and the way of being that says back to one another that I think you're intelligent, keep going, where you're going to go next with your thinking, which is one of the core components, and all of the others dance with it. But I'll leave that to my beautiful thinking partners and the rest of the call to be sharing some more about the components. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Candice. So continuing from this definition of that, a thinking environment is created through the ways in which we behave with each other to create a place of possibility where the thinker or the person who is exploring their own mind and heart is free to go as far as they can with what they want to think about. And one of those behaviors, and I really want to emphasize it's a behavior, is the one we're looking at today, which is called difference. And so I want to just define it for you, because the definition appeared about a year ago as a result of a lot of exploration, but it's quite different from the usual definitions of what is different. And listen to this, it's committing to freedom from untrue assumptions driving prejudice. So, committing to freedom from untrue assumptions driving prejudice. And how do we behave? Because what I love about this definition is it's a personal commitment to certain behaviors. So I have given it a lot of thought, because when this definition appeared, I really questioned myself about my own assumptions that drive prejudice. It's all well and easy to see the obvious ones that I carry that I can do something about. I am really interested in what are the ones that are deeper, that I do not know yet, how to begin to bring them into the light, if you will. But let's just look at that definition, and it relates to the ability to welcome difference, variety, all manner. How do we welcome that? That, by the way, was the original definition, was the ability to welcome different perspectives, different identities, which is a behavior. But this definition takes us a little bit deeper. Foundational to the ability to welcome is the ability to be free myself of whatever assumptions I carry about others that may drive prejudice. So what are these assumptions? And I'm just thinking we have so many. We have assumptions about old people. Old people are demanding. Old people think they know everything. Those are the kinds of assumptions I'm talking about. Now, those are easy and crass, but I know in looking at my own life, I am beginning, as my blind spot has light shone on it, to be able to see the kinds of prejudices I didn't know I had. That is where the rubber hits the road. It's what didn't I know I had that I still live out. Because when I live it out, it drives systems of prejudice. So that's a lot for an introduction. But we, in the world, the way we have it now, as it has been begun by this sad day, it's all the result of systems created by prejudice. Deep deep limiting assumptions about groups or different people that we live with as if they are true, and then we act upon them. And so lastly, how does it help to have this component if we want to think well for ourselves? So if I'm thinking, let's say with Candace, and I know that while I'm thinking aloud about an issue that I have, that Candace is listening to me with such extraordinary attention, yeah, that she sees me not only as old, white, female, whatever, she sees me as a human being of possibility who has creative thoughts, who has courage. That's how she's listening. That gives me that to be able to think more about whatever issue I am focused on. So I hope that's sufficient for a beginning. Thank you so much.
So I'm going to talk about what a round is. And picking up on what Marie said is that we are capable of thinking courageously as full human beings. A round is a way to give life to that, and a chance to be with a question in such a way that represents this idea that everyone matters, that each of us can produce our best thinking, and that is what will produce the best results. So simply put, a round is a question combined by a way we choose to answer that question. And the way we choose to answer it is systematically, as if we are individual parts of a system that is working together, generating each other's thinking. So we listen with brilliant and exquisite attention, and everyone is given a turn to answer the question, but in a systematic way. So we choose an order so that all our fears and anxiety about who goes next and when is it my turn, all of those concerns and are allayed and settled. And we are able to be in a place of ease, receiving each person's answer, and not preempting what we're going to do next in the round. So I see it as a system of becoming fully present in a group. And so the aspects of a round would be that there is the question, there is the direction, and very importantly, we don't choose who goes first. So a volunteer is asked for, and that also is part of the systemic way of creating ease in the round. And so with that, we'll be using rounds in a group conversation today as a means of a quick and efficient way of actually creating the ease to access everyone's thinking. Thank you.
Let's see how generative attention works for each other in this opening round. We call it the opening round to open this place for thinking environment. So with the first question, so there are actually two questions that we are going to think about now. The question is, who are you? What are a few of your group identities that you celebrate? Who are you? What are a few of your group identities that you celebrate? You have 1.5 minutes to answer this question. Any volunteer to start?
I just need a reminder of the virtual table.
Okay, I can share.
Oh, thank you, Roger.
Thank you.
This is what virtual table
Yeah,
is.
so here is a famous virtual circle. So with the volunteer starting point, and we'll go into clockwise.
Yeah.
And you have a chance to pass, and I will come back to you.
So I'm happy to volunteer. Yeah, my name is Nicole, and I live in a place called Fishhook The first part of the name is English, fish, and the other part is Afrikaans, and it means like fish corner, actually, in the beautiful False Bay. And so one of the identities I celebrate is being an open water swimmer, to really enjoy the natural beauty of the environment that I live in. And that will be also connected to some of the stories I'll tell around difference in the coming rounds. Also, I think relevant to my stories of difference is that I'm a sister and a daughter and a woman, which, yeah, has been a really integral part of my life. I have two beautiful daughters as well, so it's wonderful, yeah, feeling like I share that with them. Sometimes it might be little conversations in the hallway about who has pads to use for one another. But being able to really be celebrate my womanhood and the joy of seeing my girls reach their womanhood, yeah, is something I hold very dear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. So I'm next. So I'm Duncan, and I'm living in the hills outside of Melbourne, Australia, about 50 kilometers southeast of Melbourne. And some things that I'm celebrating is one is being a father to a wonderful 27-year-old son who teaches me many things about many aspects of identity, including gender roles and neurodiversity, and it's a great gift. I'm also an American who has lived outside the United States for more than half my life. And so I celebrate having the perspective of multiple cultures, but to be able to see my home culture both from the inside and the outside is something that I find very, very helpful. And increasingly, I think stepping into being an older white male, a group that is often seen as the problem, and reminding myself that in any identity group, not everyone is the same. And so how can I be someone who's more a solution than a problem? So thank you. Candace, over to you.
Thank you.
So Candace, currently in Cape Town, under the mountain, South African, living in Melbourne, Australia, and on holiday in South Africa at the moment. So my identities are very multi-layered. First Nations, South African woman, also identify as a Black woman, also identify as a colored woman. So because of our history of apartheid, there's quite a fraught relationship for many people with the identity being imposed of colored. And so I've embraced the whole range of those multiple identities. I think we don't need to be defined in terms of one. And at the moment, I'm really identifying with my First Nations South African woman identity. My dad passed away in March, and his email used to be Khoisan Lionel. And so I'm just, I feel, and we just scattered his ashes at the Gamtus River in the Eastern Cape, which is where I'm from, which is the name of the local San people in that area, the Gamtush. And so, that's a seminal identity for me at the moment. And also a proudly South African immigrant living in Australia. So somebody who is very positive about South Africa and residing in Australia, not because I fled South Africa, but because I was lured to Australia with work. And so that's an unusual one. Thank you. Over to Sasha.
Yeah, thanks, Candace. So in the moment, some of the group identities that I'm thinking that will become relevant to this conversation is the identity of being a mathematician. Definitely the identity of being a gay man, which is something I'm very proud of and I've learned to love. I celebrate the fact that I'm a husband and a father to a wonderful, feisty 6-year-old who is definitely the product of growing up in a thinking environment. And there are no bounds to his freedom of expression, let's say, that I can see. So very happy to be with all of these identities and many, many more. And looking forward to exploring them today. Thank you.
Thank you. So it is my turn, and yes, hello, my name is Ruriko. I am from Tokyo, Japan. And then, yes, as you would probably see me today in my kimono, my Japanese traditional costume or clothing. So the group identities, one of the group identities that I celebrate is definitely the Japanese culture that I celebrate. And then as it may not really turn out that really greatly, but this is actually a flower arrangement in Japanese style. And then although all the flowers are from different regions of the world, sometimes this probably came from Australia, this one. I really hope that's something that would come from South Africa, but this time only from Australia, but still it's really nice to have that. So this is actually what we are really good at as a Japanese, is really mixing up different aspects, different cultures, and then make it almost saying that it is Japanese. And then that's what I love. So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ruriko. So I'm Raja. I'm in Bangalore, India. So the group identities I very strongly celebrate about myself. I think the first one is based on my mother tongue. So the identity is called Tamilan, the people who speak Tamil as language. Sometimes I'm obsessed about it, not celebrated. So I recognize. And the second one is I am professionally in the space of helping people to grow and deal with change. So that's something I celebrate quite a lot. And the third one, I think I'm a mindless rebel. So all that I need is somebody provides a structure or a rule. There is a strong itch to break. Yeah. So that's surely a group identity I love. The other group identity that probably all of us have is we are people who believe in and practice thinking environment. Yeah. So I'm done. I think these are 4 I can think about. Over to you, Maris.
Thank you. That's great. So when I was thinking about that, definitely female. I have always, from a young age, adored being female with everything it brought. At this time in my life, I'm enjoying and learning being old and an elder. It's a fascinating, ever-changing identity. I think also I am very proudly South African, but an ex-Egyptian. So my background is Semitic. I am of a Jewish heritage. From Egypt, from Syria and Lebanon. So that's an identity that's actually quite hard to live in, the mix of all of that. Another identity I relish is learning motherhood and learning grandmotherhood, but especially learning motherhood of daughters who are in their mid-40s is kind of weird. But so I'm doing everything like that for the first time in these identities. That's what I'm enjoying. Thanks, everyone. Gregor, it's for you.
Thank you. So one of the identities I'm really growing on and celebrating and grappling with is fatherhood, especially to teenage children. So they find many ways to express themselves and be themselves, and then force me to look at myself and my assumptions and my thinking, go, what am I doing? Am I right? Are they right? And that growth is really something that I love and love to support. Another identity I celebrate is I'm actually a migrant. So I'm originally German, and I live and I see myself as a wanderer between worlds, so between the English-speaking world and the non-English-speaking world. And part of my heritage I'm proud of is, the Germans used to be known as the poets and thinkers, and I love that label. And then obviously a couple of world wars later, and the other thing I'm proud of is Article 1 of the Basic Law of Germany, which is human dignity is inviolable. So the focus on human dignity, which to me, especially with what's happening at the moment in America, in Australia, around the world, is something that is very close to my heart and that I'm very proud of. Thank you.
So with Gregor, I think we have already finished the first round. So over to you, Azure.
Thank you, everyone, for a very rich round already of identifying yourself. And now it would be wonderful to hear what one of your most beautiful experiences of living the component of difference is, and what assumptions or beliefs helped you live that component. Again, you can start with whoever is ready and go clockwise from there.
So, yeah, so I have certain very strong opinions and beliefs about diversity and inclusion and religion. And these are times in India where some of these are challenged quite a lot. So I remember one-on-one conversation where someone spoke to me for 90 minutes. Initially, it was difficult because I saw many of them as their bias, and I did not agree to. So it was an informal conversation. It took 15 minutes, and suddenly it came to me that their lived experience is not the same. Even though we are in the same country, but the part they lived was very different, and their lived experience was not the same. So for 90 minutes, I was able to just listen without, at least I didn't interrupt at all. And so in the middle, there were a lot of fears. Will I change my own stance, right? So I have to tell myself, I don't need to look at it as changing my stance. Can I be empathetic to what they have gone through? And then I think the other belief which was very important for me in that conversation was, can I at least understand their lived experience and perspective, which may be very, very different from me. And probably the last one, that as our assumption was, I don't need to agree to them. I can just be there in that space. I think that otherwise that 90 minutes could have become very frustrating and might have ended up in a fighting battle kind of a space. And this was the first time on that topic I was able to do. And I felt happy. Thank you. Over to you, Maris.
Thanks, Raja. Well, my experience will be very current. It also serves for me to advertise a book that was published last month. It's called Diviner Mind by Nicola Robbins. Diviner Mind, and how the wisdom of indigenous culture used in dealing with complexity. And yeah, I just want to buy it. Anyway, reading her did exactly what I was speaking about earlier. It illuminated parts of my thinking where prejudices lived that I was unaware of. And I just always get excited because I don't know how else to work those areas of my life unless somebody shines a light on it. And beginning to her story of becoming a diviner a long, long time ago, 25 years ago, and how she is bringing that, the integration of wisdom that has always dealt with complexity and bringing it into organizations and into life. But for me, it was just increasing awakening so that I can be more liberated of assumptions that may limit others in my life. So thanks. Moving on. So it's Gregor.
Thank you, Maurice. So one of my most beautiful experience of living the component of difference was actually traveling, and I was I had returned to Germany from Australia, and then I was wondering what to do with my frequent flyer points, and I could go to Florence or Milan, and I thought, and Sarajevo, and this was in the 90s, and this was just after the Balkan War, and I decided to go to Sarajevo. And what was beautiful about it was I had no, for one, I had no plans. So I didn't have anything booked. And I literally was sitting on the plane, was talking to someone, and we had landed. And he asked me, "So where are you staying?" And I said, "Don't really know. I'm going to be looking for a hotel." And he said, "Why don't you stay with us?" And he was on a training course in Europe, in Germany, and then he actually looked after me. And his son was about my age, and we hung out. It was only a weekend, but it was just the hospitality to strangers. I had not experienced that, and language was a struggle. And then actually being in Sarajevo and seeing that over many hundreds of years, different religions and different cultures had actually lived together in peace and work together, and the city itself is beautiful in a mountain landscape. To then also be conscious of the horrors of what happened, and recently finding out about the human safaris that were run, that didn't detract from the beauty of the actual place and the history thereof and the hospitality I experienced. And there was a lot of assumptions in that, which were overthrown when I actually went there. Thank you.
Thank you, Gregor. It's my turn in the round. I think for me, one of the most beautiful experiences of difference that I had happened this year on the 27th of April. It's when South Africa celebrates our democratic freedom. And a group of open water swimmers collectively decided to link visually and symbolically the struggle for freedom from apartheid in South Africa with the Palestinian struggle for freedom from apartheid Israel. And it was a group of swimmers, made a diverse group of swimmers, predominantly Black swimmers. It's a very sort of white-dominated sport. It's also very competitive, so we were very clear that actually we wanted a group of strong swimmers to swim from Robben Island, which had been a jail. during apartheid, where many of you will know Nelson Mandela and many of our freedom fighters were incarcerated. And the swim from that island was often deathly. And I think there was one prisoner once who made it, but died soon after. But we also wanted a wider group of swimmers to join, who did from a kind of rock outside of the bay we swam into, which is Big Bay. And what was so beautiful about the swim is that we were seen off from the shore by a group of people, including a rabbi, an imam, and a priest, who said prayers for not only for solidarity, but for peace, and for unity, and for the humanity that we prayed for this morning. And the being part of a collective with that in mind, to transcend these boundaries of identity, right? And to come together through our shared humanity was such a powerful experience. And it gave many of the people who are part of the struggle, and deeply connected to it here, a chance to actually celebrate, to instead come together as with in joy, and in celebration, was a huge relief and really welcome energy. And so we arrived on the beach to thousands of people who welcomed us like sporting heroes, and it was just so magical to be part of, and to think that yes, we can come together because of the shared pain and suffering that we all are part of whenever any one of us suffers too. Thank you, and it's over to you, Duncan.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, everyone. So I was trying to find one experience, and I think what I've had to go with is over more than 30-year career working in diversity, equity, and inclusion as a consultant and teacher and facilitator and advisor. It's not just one experience, it's many experiences of seeing people come to understand their own assumptions, their own biases, the prejudices, the things that they carry, and to come to accept the humanity that we all have biases, which can be positive and negative, and that's just part of being human. That the question sometimes is not, am I biased? The question is, which bias am I using at the moment? And so to see people kind of wake up to that reality that, okay, this is something we all do. We don't need to be judging ourselves like, oh, I'm a terrible person because I'm biased. No, I'm human, therefore I'm biased. Oh, what can I learn about this? And how can I use that knowledge so that we can work better together, so that the differences start to fall away the more I become aware of them? It's that kind of holding that both and balance of, oh, the differences really matter. And also our common humanity matters just as much. And so to see people are kind of increasingly waking up to this understanding has been, I think, my most kind of consistent, beautiful experience in many, many cultures, many countries, many areas of work, seeing that consistent humanity shining through. So that is the beautiful part for me. Thank you. And Candace, over to you.
Thank you, Duncan, and thank you, everyone. I think my most beautiful experience of this component has been choosing not to have children. So the identity of choosing not to have children. Some people call it being child-free, but that doesn't work for me either, as opposed to childless. And so, yeah, the identity that I know of child-free is an identity. So somebody who's chosen not to have children. And I think it works for me because it's a choice. And the fact that I can have a choice, I realized afterwards, is what makes it so liberating, that we could stop and take a step back and feel into whether this was something we wanted to do. And the fact that it's so easeful, I think, is what I really love, because I check in sometimes. Is it really okay that we've chosen this path? And it's always okay. And so that's really what's so beautiful about this identity, that it is something it's really living my truth. And I am so grateful that I could have that option, and that my parents also embraced it, because I would always check in, how does it feel to not have given them the opportunity to be grandparents, given how loving they are and how they love children. And the fact that they have nurtured thinking for ourselves and making our own choices, they really embodied that to the full in how they've embraced being honorary grandparents to everybody else's kids in our circle, including Nicole's. And the fact that my husband and I both could be each other's thinking partners equally around this, and that we were totally on the same page, is also a blessing. And so the component of difference that we share together in how we walk in the world together, having made this choice and embrace that in a world that's predominantly parenting adults. So celebrating all of the parents. Thank you. Over to you, Soshin.
Thanks, Candice. So one really beautiful moment was this year on our 7th wedding anniversary. Seventh anniversary of our marriage, we decided to throw ourselves a wedding, and that was a really beautiful celebration of so many different types of people coming together. I would imagine that for, I don't know, maybe more than 95% of the audience that would have been their first experience of a gay wedding. So that's also just a beautiful difference in itself. But one of the things that happened in the build up to the wedding was that we had booked a venue, and a venue that we loved, and we made a trip down to Durban to look at the venue and to talk to them. And then when we got back to Joburg, we were told, sorry, we've decided we no longer do any gay weddings by this venue. So it was shocking, and also shocking that they had the audacity to put that in writing. But I think my reflection is that in all that difference, we were drawn to people and to systems and to cultures and to love that celebrated us. And although it was such a rocky start, it ended up being such a beautiful celebration, knowing that everyone who was attached to it was just full of love for our marriage. Thank you.
Thank you. So, yes, one of the beautiful experiences of difference was that last October I welcomed 20 participants from all over the world in a Japanese temple, and then offered a tea in a very traditional tea ceremony way. And also I offered them the tea, but also they also had to make themselves tea together. There was also something that was a beautiful moment. And then when I started, before starting, what I always say is that silence is also part of what we do here. So that actually really probably shifting our attention from talking something, but rather just appreciating the silence. And then that makes us really appreciate our presence together more. So that's really sort of the ground rule. And then sometimes being silent makes people so scary. What's going on? So it's such a different experience, probably for the participants. but they really appreciate it. So the silence is almost like until when I serve the tea, then the silence can be broken. So they can really start talking about appreciating. So sometimes those differences can really make a bit of a different contrast to what it takes to create a certain environment for everybody can really connect with their through their presence, their really own existence. So I really appreciated that experience. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing your beautiful experiences. Duncan, I think you'll lead us through the next question.
Yes, thank you very much, Nicole, for guiding us through that round. So our next question is, what was a challenging experience of living the component of difference? And what assumptions or beliefs limited you to live the component? And again, anyone can start. We'll go clockwise around our virtual table, and 2 minutes per person, and please keep your own time. And anyone can start. So what's been a challenging experience living the component of difference?
Happy to start.
Thank you, Soshan.
So, timer. Yeah, so one of the things, the reasons I mentioned that being a mathematician is one of the identities that I both celebrate and struggle with is because one of the limiting things or the difficult things that I've experienced is being a slow mathematician. So my journey to studying mathematics has been a very long one and with lots of breaks in between. And I decided to get back into it because I loved it and I wanted to know more. But there were a few things going on that I realized over the last couple of decades of getting back into it. One was that I think there was a certain achievement bias in my mind that was preventing me from doing it for the joy of doing it. So I would only be good enough when I get a master's, or I would only be good enough when I get a PhD, and so on, which was actually totally opposed to my reasons for choosing to study mathematics in the first place. But as I was in it, I noticed myself, it's a bit of imposter syndrome, that the assumption that I don't know enough to tackle this problem, or I don't know enough to apply myself. And it's been one of the biggest teachers for me as a teacher to identify with that pain and struggle that my students experience, where the advice is easy, just try and get it wrong and fail, and that's how you learn. But actually feeling how difficult it is to try when you start off with the assumption that I'm not good enough to do this, that's been a huge challenge. And that I I appreciate the experience for teaching me that. Thank you. Over to you, Ruriko.
Thank you, Soshan. The challenges that is also associated with the difference that I mentioned about the being silent or sometimes being a little bit reserved. That's the cultural aspects that I have in my Japaneseness. So when I was put into a group of people with different nationalities, I would really look at someone who is so silent, or maybe it might really look like a sage from Japan or something like that, or Zen person from Japan, something like that. But eventually I realized, okay, so what's really behind that? I was really first thinking about probably my most exposed experience that I had was when I studied in France and Singapore. That was really the time I was really surrounded by people from very different cultures. And then I was not quite sure whether my English is good enough to communicate well. And then at the end of the day, one day at the evening, one Italian gentleman who is always speaking to me, he looks like, told me, Ruriko, yeah, it takes a lot to speak not in my mother tongue. I really can't speak anymore in English. And I realized, oh no, you also think like that. And that really opened up my assumptions. My English is not good enough or something like that. I should just try. And that was really a liberating point for me to really commit into my difference. And then also, I hope that it also will be good for the others that I am really trying. So maybe encouraging others to try. So that's my episode. Thank you.
So for me, I think this is maybe, I don't know, 7, 8 years back. I was part of a international workshop in Germany where 60 plus people were there. And it was the check-in time, the evening, and I said something, and somebody jumped on me. Or in some sense, the person responded with a very kind of ridicule. And I think I just retorted like a madman. Not in very bad way, but still I just said something which was very hurting. And actually I said it was about group identities. Even the statement was about that. So I think just to look at that experience, and what I have seen is whenever there are historical, so for example, this person was from Britain. So coming from India, and I have not lived before independence, but the whole colonial past still overweighs in the way I look at another country, right? Are people from a different language or religion? So what I realized is somewhere the assumption is whenever I see the difference, the limiting assumption is they're trying to rule over me, or they are trying to say they are better than me. Because I've read enough books where they say Indians can't think, kind of nonsense. So the whole thing is I was projecting this whole thing. So it happens not only about nationalities. I think I do whenever it comes to language also within India. I get into madness when somebody is putting down my mother tongue, whatever, right? So what I see is there is a very deep fear of being, I think, being killed. My mother tongue will be killed, my identity will be killed. So it's a fear of deep sense of survival. And whenever I reach there, and it's a very natural animal to just say, I'm going to do whatever it is to make myself survive, right? So nowadays, more and more, I'm able to see it and recognize it. And yeah, still, I have not mastered it, but it's quite, whenever it has a historical perspective, I think it becomes far more difficult, at least in my case. So I am done. Over to you, Maris.
Thank you, Raja. So this question brought me back. I love, by the way, how differently we are all answering this, and this question, how personal it becomes. So mine too is quite personal. The kind of background I've come from, which is a more spiritually grounded kind of background. And when I started working in organizations a very long time ago, I had the assumption that people like me, who, as you can see already anyway, smile a lot and always see the glass half full, are just regarded without much seriousness because we're fluffy and floofy and Pollyanna and naive and unrealistic. So I carried those internal assumptions. Nobody ever said that to me. Well, maybe one or two, but generally nobody ever said them. So they were all internal to me until one day I did have a time to think with somebody. And what emerged out of that thinking for me was the understanding that also my type of intelligence was essential. It wasn't the same. And even if I saw things in a positive light, it still mattered. It wasn't less than anybody else's. And I still had my feet on the ground. And so that was a challenge, but it was a real liberation, which I carry to this day, that my kind of intelligence is an integral part of the whole. So thanks. And Gregor.
So, component of difference and challenge. I guess for me, it's a story of, it feels like failure. It feels like I try to build bridges and don't, yeah, the connection isn't there. So this is about someone we met a few years ago, and it was around German cultural identity. And I think if I look at which part of my Germanness I emphasize and which part of Germanness a person emphasizes, we are at very different points of emphasis. And I'm firmly believe in the common humanity. Like, we all want to protect our well-being and what we perceive our identity to be and what's important to us. But German history offers multiple different ways of choosing to do that. And for me, dealing with, someone who thinks highly of National Socialism and what they stood for, is really challenging. And I got to the point where I was feeling like the assumption was that I'm not good enough in terms of, I don't know enough history, or I don't know enough detail to stand up for that. But then in the end, it's about, me as a person and what I believe is right, because we all live at this time now, and we take from history what we choose to highlight. And I think it's that choice that I feel strongly about. Nicole.
Thank you, Gregor. So my challenge actually links to the most beautiful experience of living the component of difference. After the swim, a very, very good Jewish friend of mine called to congratulate me. I hadn't actually told her about the swim, just by incident, and and so we were suddenly communicating, and I really wanted to share with her this incredible part of who supported the swim and who was swimming with us, was somebody who represented South African Jews for a free Palestine. And I had been so moved by this, obviously, also what she was experiencing within her own community, but also, the solidarity with us had been a very moving part for me. And so when I did share, why as a community they were supporting this swim and taking part in it and what it meant, my friend immediately came back and just said, "This is really, really difficult for me. I don't want to have this conversation with you. I do believe in Jewish people's right to self-determination and statehood and to defend the land of Israel." And I got a real shock. I've been friends with this person since I was 26 years, even probably before then. And I thought, oh, and we both kind of clocked, that we have different positions. And so, fine. and recently, a continuation of another very good friend of ours, we became friends around the same time, had been at her place for dinner, and they'd also been talking, and he suddenly realized from what she was saying that you know, she had prejudice against Muslim people, and realized he wanted to get out of the conversation and asked to leave. And she phoned me because she realized that they had reached a rift in their friendship, where he recognized that she was Zionist and was like, I cannot tolerate that, and walked out. And she phoned me. And she phoned me because we understood that we held different positions on this, and we are still friends. But this conversation was so difficult because in it, and in needing to be seen and heard, she too was telling me things about her belief system, and that was very, very difficult because it was the antithesis of what I believed. And as I was saying, you know, why are you doing this? Why are you telling me this in this way? And 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 it was painful to me too. And there was this moment in which it was so I don't know, it was so incompatible. And I think because we've overcome so much conflict in our friendship, and we just reached out to each other in and just prayed together with the only way we could do it, we could overcome our own belief systems, was to just pray, and recognizing that as South Africans, also totally disconnected from the people who are deeply, deeply and physically involved in this conflict, but have ideological connection. That if this was something that we could suffer, and already friendships had broken because of it, you know, just that real sadness and pain of that suffering. And I think it was very, very challenging, and uh, still to find a way to connect right across that difference, and to hold that love is what is really important, and to not let anything stand in the way, any belief, to separate us, and to be part of that separation from one another. So yeah, very, very challenging conversation, but one that it really felt like we had to hold on to something beyond ourselves, outside of ourselves, to remain in connection, and to hold on to the love that we do feel and isn't in agreement with that, beyond ourselves and what we want for the world.
Thank you, Nicole. I think it's my turn in the circle next. So one challenging experience that I recall in my diversity, equity, and inclusion consulting career was when I was asked to be a keynote speaker at an International Women's Day event for a group of police, fire, and emergency services people, about 300 people. And just before I went up to give my talk, the organizer pulled me aside and said, Duncan, I just wanted you to know that I've been kind of checking in with a number of the women here, and a lot of them are not happy. And I thought, it's International Women's Day. I would have thought, you know, people would be happy. What's going on? And she said, well, Duncan, we've been doing this for 10 years, and you are the first male speaker we have ever had for International Women's Day. And a lot of the women are just saying, this is wrong. Why did you have a man come to speak on International Women's Day? This is terrible. Anyway, Duncan, I thought you'd like to know that just before you give your talk. So thank you very much. And now here's Duncan Smith, our keynote speaker. And I go up onto the stage in front of 300 people, mostly women who are in a fairly defensive posture. And of course, I'm thinking, a lot of them are police. I wonder if they're armed. I wonder if I should be, so there's all this stuff going on. And I guess the point of it is the assumptions that I've carried and had to live with working in the diversity field for a long time as a white, heterosexual, able-bodied male, with the assumptions from other people that I don't belong in the diversity profession or even in the diversity conversation. And so that's just been an interesting being on the receiving end of other assumptions about what would I know about what it feels like to be different without the inquiry. And I think that's one thing that draws me to the thinking environment is the questions, the incisive questions, the inquiry, the listening, and the acceptance of all of our experience. So that was one of my challenges. Candace, over to you.
Thank you, Duncan. Thank you, everyone. My experience with this component being challenging was where my difference was not seen. And a colleague of mine, student of mine, who I'd been working with for a few years, I discovered, to my absolute surprise, didn't know that I was Black. And yes, it really hit me when she looked at me like, what do you mean you're Black? Like that. Like, what do you mean you and Peter are Black? And it was the most astonishing experience of being negated or made invisible, all of those things that I knew at a theoretical level. I had an embodied experience. So being a fair-skinned Black woman, that experience of assumptions that get made, and then interrogating my assumptions around why do I need to be identified as Black? What is that? Why do I need to be seen? And is that to do with a performance? Is that to do with my essence? And so I started interrogating what is that about? And the limiting assumption also was like, oh, I hadn't shown up as my true self if she didn't know that core identity of mine, which was so interesting. So I made it be about me being wrong. And of course, judging this person for, oh, she wasn't really listening to me. Was she ever listening to me? And so the replacing of those assumptions with, let's see what might emerge as a kind of third space if we were to let all of that go. And because I'm in a loving relationship with this person, so it was fascinating dance with this component and continues. Thank you.
So this is a freshest thinking round, and the question is basically, what are your freshest thoughts about the component of difference? And as always, anyone can start, go clockwise, and we'll take a minute each. Who'd like to start us off?
May I start? So my freshest thinking about difference is, as the first word of the definition says, it's a commitment. And then after listening to your very personal stories, and what I realize now is that it is a commitment that takes our courage and then also the curiosity. Sometimes the curiosity and the courage might be a bit weird combination, but to be curious about the difference takes courage, oftentimes in challenging times. And then that's what I really hope that I would like to have in me, the courage to commit to the difference. Thank you.
So for me, I think my freshest thought is, I don't know. What comes to me is, out of the 10 components, this seems to be the most difficult one to live through. And the other thought that comes to me is, I think two sides. One is living this component means continuously recognizing my own limiting assumptions about my own group identity as well as about other group identities. And constantly seeing both is one. At the same time, how can I celebrate, like nature is full of, or nature is full of difference, right? So how can I celebrate difference even though it is scary? So those are some of my thoughts. Over to you, Maris.
Thank you, Raja. My thinking now is, because it is certainly a challenging component to live, it reminds me of what, Candace, you said right at the beginning, that all the components form a system. And so the thought that's just come is, what if in the moment of challenge, of difference, I would choose to bring ease in that moment? What difference would it make? Because components work together, they're never isolated from one another. Yeah. And the other was obviously attention. Just inviting the other challenges in the moment of difficulty. And I say that to myself with wanting to be open-hearted to those people with whom I so strongly disagree. So to bring ease and attention might shift my way in. So thanks. Yeah.
So my freshest thinking is, yes, it is. I think it is about attention. It's I'm yearning for space where conflict or difference can be held and not made worse. So part for me of the thinking environment is around equality. So taking turns, taking equal turns, and maybe even sometimes going back to the Quaker origins of part of what Nancy Klein was doing around silence, to actually come together in silence and see if there's ways to relate beyond latching onto difference, but to actually look at the commonality and see what emerges. I think that's all for now. Thank you. Nicole.
Thanks, Gregor. Sure. Freshest thinking. After hearing all of your stories, yeah, I think I recently read Jacinda Ardern's book, and a key part of that book, and I think a really astounding aspect of her leadership, arose at the time of the terrorist attacks on the Muslim terror attacks in Christchurch, and really feeling and being with also the attack on Bondi Beach that happened this morning, last evening. I'm timelines are off with the time zone, and really thinking about what it takes to be with the pain that difference can incite in others, and being with that challenge. Ruriko, I totally agree. It takes so much courage and open-heartedness and emptiness, I think, to be able to be filled with that difference, with the potential animosity, the potential for rift and separation. And yeah, and death and destruction at the same time as holding space and being with the potential for love and solidarity and humanity to overcome. Thank you, Duncan. Over to you.
Thank you, Nicole. My freshest thinking is thinking of the component of feelings, building on what you said, Nicole, and the space for those, and the deep feelings that we have connected to our beliefs and our assumptions and our biases. And so to be able to bring those along with that sense of equality, that we may not necessarily agree, or we may have different feelings, but to be able to, I guess, encourage ourselves and each other to have the conversation, to be able to sit down with each other, whatever the differences may be that we perceive, to find the commonality, and how much the thinking environment can enable us to have those conversations. What a powerful possibility that it gives us to do this work. So, thank you. Candace.
Thank you, Duncan. My freshest thinking is actually a return to something that our colleague Tricia Lord once said, and it often rings in my head. She said that a lot of the time when we are having a reaction to something, she would just say to herself, oh, look there's that component of difference again. And so the power of the component of difference to carry us through so many experiences in our lives, and I do it. Thank you, Tricia. When I remember, when I'm not too activated and in reaction, oh, right, that's the component of difference, singing its note. So thank you for reminding me of how this can hold us steady. Over to you, Soshin.
Yeah, also very touched and inspired by this conversation. My freshest thinking is the need in myself to build the capacity to be able to not become too attached to, or become overly attached to an idea, instead of, being with the common humanity of the person I'm disagreeing with. And so, yeah, I just recognizing the idea that anger and pain in the moment is to be welcomed, but at the same time, a capacity to acknowledge that beforehand might help access, a wider range of feelings in the moment, to reach out. Yeah. Thank you.
And that completes the round, so it's over to Raja.
Thanks, Gregor. So we will move to closing round. So the question in the closing round is, what was valuable for you in this conversation? And what is one quality that you want to appreciate in the person who comes after you when we go clockwise in the virtual table? Usually, this is a question all of us know. So let's go ahead. Yeah. Whoever is ready can start.
I can start. Thank you, Roger. I loved how everything everybody else was contributing in the round allowed me to think afresh about the round question. So what I thought about the question completely shifted as I listened to each one of you. And so I also, of course, allowed myself to be impacted by the embracing of difference that you were engaging with in how you responded to the question. And then I, in turn, allowed myself to go in a different direction in my thinking, because of how you chose to answer the questions. So thank you. And Soshin, I guess you're next in our round. And today I'm so moved by your shining embodiment of this component. The component of difference is just radiating from your heart and mind and soul through how you engage with those who have radically different views to you, and your forgiveness, your non-judgment is what I heard coming through today, through what you've shared, through your experiences. Thank you for your difference and your embodiment.
Thank you, Candice. Oh, I loved the richness and the stories. I think they will stay with me. So the stories of each of yours been very special for me in this meeting. Thank you for that. And to Ruriko, I would like to appreciate how you weave different stories together, and you've got this stillness, quiet vibrancy about you. And your example of your arrangement behind you is so kind of symbolic of that. So thank you for all that vibrancy and weaving together of stories.
Oh, thank you, Soshan. Yeah, maybe I was trying to do a bit of different frequency from here in Tokyo, and then I believe that that's really the beauty of the harmony today that I really experienced, and I really appreciate it. And in Japan, Japanese culture is often referred to as harmonious, but the harmony itself is really coming from differences. We are different and we are getting together. That makes the harmony. So with that, let me then, I would like to, yes, talk to you, Raja, thank you for your very sound presence. But at the same time, I really, admire your courage to say out loud, difference is the most difficult component for us. And then it's really, I am really appreciating your sharing your vulnerability with us. We are all humans, and I really thank you so much.
Okay, so I think what was valuable for me, I think, in simple word, it was intense, emotionally rich experience. Yeah. So that's most valuable. And Maris, I think your childlike quality of vulnerability, curiosity, and willing to learn every moment. So I think I want to appreciate your childness in you. Thank you. Over to you, Maris.
Thanks, Raja. And thanks, Raja, anyway, for the courage to set this up and take the risk of creative creation. I have to thank you, Duncan, I love this. I am human, therefore I am biased. I love that. I've never heard that before. And it's such a humbling starting point. I'm just totally taken with it. So I particularly appreciate that with all the other richnesses and stories and openness of heart. So thank you. And Gregor, we've been together twice now. And there's certain things I just particularly appreciate. There's something about your considered nature that you express that feels to me very secure and anchoring. You seem to have deep anchors that allow for others to be feeling stable and held. And I just appreciate that. Thanks, Gregor.
Thank you, Maurice. So what I find most valuable in this conversation has been the diversity of all of us, as well as the shared practice and for me, the power of rounds and sharing time brings such richness and safety. So being able to share perspective. And Nicole, what I want to appreciate in you today is your authenticity of sharing your where you are, what you do, and the unflinching courage of actually entering that space of really significant difference and staying in that to find a way forward for, as fellow humans. Really appreciate that.
Thank you, Gregor. Yeah, wow. Thank you all for your really, I was really touched, I think, by how everybody brought more of their difference to the conversation today. It felt like, oh, there were more different parts of each other that I hadn't known of before. And I think that really just added such a depth to the richness of our conversation and the psychological safety that we'd already created. And so just really appreciating this circle. For the light it's been able to help us shine on our biases, our differences, and the beautiful, wonderful mycelial network that is the 10 components at work. I will really remember to bring ease, I think, into this space to help me. And so I also really wanted to appreciate you, Duncan, today for owning being an old white man and all that comes with, which is huge, right? And there is a lot of prejudice that you also have to carry in that role. And so I really wanted to appreciate your willingness to show and expose your vulnerability. And also the curiosity with which you are able to be moved and with which you are able to turn up genuinely as yourself. And really wanted to thank you for your willingness to be moved and to be who you are. And that feels like a kind of real dynamic process.
Thank you, Nicole. What's been valuable for me, I think, is this group embodying the component of difference, that just everything that we've brought, and because of that, the opportunity to really engage deeply for myself personally with the component, to find things to celebrate in each person, challenges, and just kind of my own inner process while people are, the 3 streams of attention and Yeah, just the value of the thinking environment bringing to this topic. It's just such a gift. So thank you all. And Candace, I want to appreciate particularly today, because we've spent time together before, that given your deep knowledge and experience of the thinking environment, just the freshness that you bring each time you speak, that there's something new, there's something fresh, deeply personal, that brings the thinking environment to such there's such life in it every time you share, and I deeply appreciate your ability to do that.
Thank you, Duncan.
So we are done? Yes. Okay.